think we're live.
All right. All right. It looks like we're live. Hey, everybody. I know Dragon Lair, Kira, Anthony all stopped by. Rico stopped by, but he said he had places to be. Thanks for tuning in tonight. It should be a great time. It seemed like people enjoyed everything last time, and we actually went well over the hour that I had planned, and we ended up talking fish stuff for about 3 hours. I know some of the streams turn into hangout sessions that get pretty off topic, but we had some good stuff come up and met some new people. So it was a great time. How you doing tonight, Priscilla?
I'm doing great. I worked all day, so nothing too exciting.
How'd work to go? Hey, S. Looks like some folks are trickling in. I know I posted up the link on a couple Facebook groups. Amy from Sand Creek Aquatics 2 stopped by. I think she was in another stream, so hopefully she comes back to us for a little bit here. Tom from Skipper's Aquarium, hello. And I think that's everybody that saw pop in chat. If you're not in chat, thanks for tuning in. I know we got some people that just enjoy watching, don't chat so much. Maybe they're busy doing other things, but we appreciate you being here. And I know I'm sure you guys get sick of hearing me spout off names, but I do like this stream to be, an interaction. It's not just me up here talking to Priscilla, and it's not just me here talking to the camera. If that's all I wanted to do, I'd make a video and upload it later. But I like to interact with you guys. So I love to meet all of you individually. That's why I try to pick you all out of the chat as I see it. And if you're not in the chat, I'd encourage you to do so. It's a great time. Helps me, helps spark some conversation amongst everybody else. And if you have any specific questions, myself and Priscilla can definitely chime in on that. Greg the Gup guy, hello, how's it going? Hope you're all having a great day. Here in Guam, it's in the mid 80s, which is a nice change from what looks like the Northeast is getting. I think I heard up to 2 feet of snow in some places. So if you're getting snowed on, stay safe. I know a lot of people worry about power outages and snowstorms. If you have any questions about that stuff, I think I'll probably fire up either a live stream one day and I'll talk about that, or I'll just make a video of it and give you kind of my 2 cents in what I do to prepare for snow. Skipper City's getting some Because You're Fish. Hello, thanks for stopping by. And last week you kind of got to know a little bit more about me, and we talked to Priscilla a little bit. This week we're going to get into some more detailed topics and some focused discussion for the first hour or so here. And let's talk about filtration. It's always a hot topic. People are always asking, what filter should I get for this tank? What filter should I get for that tank? Will a sponge filter work for this? Can I run canister filters on this tank that's reef ready, so it's drilled with overflows and returns? What should I put in my filters? There's always tons of questions. There will always be tons of questions. And hopefully this live stream kind of sparks some discussion and makes you think. And hopefully you don't just take my word for gospel or Priscilla's, but hopefully it kind of puts a bug in your ear, and it causes you to go out there and do some more research for yourself. I'm sure, Priscilla, at the shop, you probably get people coming in asking about filters all the time, right?
Yes. But then it always really depends on what your end goal is, what you're gonna set up.
Yeah, and that's as with a lot of things in life, there's no one answer that's going to work the best for everybody, right? So, for example, somebody may have a 400-gallon tank, and they've got, maybe there's some big Oscars, or maybe they have some of the larger cats. And for them, maybe a sump is the best option. You probably wouldn't want to run a sponge filter on a tank that large, one, because it wouldn't be terribly efficient. And the size of sponge filter that you would need would definitely detract from the aesthetics of the tank. So aesthetics definitely come into play sometimes too. Robert from Tennessee Aqua's here. Hey, Robert. Anthony's back with us. Hello, Anthony. Appreciate you being the tip of the spear in the chat there. You do a great job. If you could just drop links as required in the chat this evening, be much appreciated. Fuggin' Fish. Kevin, what's up, bud?
Anthony is a moderator since when? I'm not a moderator on this channel.
Well, it's because you're too busy talking to be a moderator, or you should be talking. If not, you're not doing your job. Because you're a co-host. You're up here for a reason. Rocco, is Rocco here? Rocco's Fish Room. Got no sound, but he's here. I know he said he was trying to power nap earlier. Thanks for stopping by, Rocco. I know we've talked several times before. Hope you're doing well down there in Texas. Probably plenty warm. Don't usually get snow down there, but I was in Wichita Falls for a while and did get some snow there.
See, Kira has a new logo.
Kira does have a new logo. And I mentioned to Kira in the chat before we kind of got fired up here, I bumped into Kira on Instagram. So if you have Instagram, which I do, you can find me all things fish on Instagram. My link should be on my channel description, and I believe it's usually included in most of my video descriptions. I try to anyway. I don't use it as much as I should. But I love Instagram's a great place to be able to go and see a bunch of cool stuff really, really fast. So if you only have a couple minutes or if you're sitting waiting in line somewhere, Instagram's perfect to see what other people are up to and see some super cool things. I'm a plant guy myself, so I know George Farmer posts a lot of his stuff on Instagram, so it's kind of cool to see that stuff there. So if you have Instagram, drop it in the comments below. And I'll check you out. Again, you can find me. My link is below, and if it's not there now, I'll make sure that you guys have access to it. Mike did all things fish. Yep, thanks, Priscilla. Appreciate it. You're a moderator. You said you weren't.
I got Instagram too, but
okay,
it's just art stuff. Well, actually, no, I post fish stuff.
And that's kind of, Instagram. I share I like to go fishing. So on my Instagram, there's probably a bunch of stuff about me going fishing. So check Kira out, check Priscilla out. Like I said, if you have an Instagram, drop it down in the comments, and I will make sure that I head over there and follow you. Bottom Dwellers, he's here for now. Internet access, funny. Thanks for stopping by, appreciate it. But on to filtration. So, like we said, there's no one best answer for everything, and we all have our preferences. And whatever works best, generally speaking, stick with what's best for you. But sometimes there are better options out there, and just because you haven't tried it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try it and see if maybe it works better. But one of the things that I see a lot is people talk about filter media, and this is kind of a big one. It's filter media, in my opinion, is an easy place to overspend money. What do you think, Priscilla? Because there's some expensive media out there. You can go, people have thrown everything in your filter media from dollar store pop scrubbers to super fancy matrix, biohome, whatever the super latest ceramic type stuff is. What's your take on it?
Yeah, so I mean, with filter media, sometimes it's really like you get what you spend kind of in return. There's really good filter media that's really expensive, but I don't think it's a necessity. You can go the cheap way as well and get similar results. But yeah, it's all about, let's say, lava rocks versus like matrix. I mean, lava rocks is much, much cheaper than the matrix is from Seachem, but they both give you about the same result, but then you can just get one at the fish store. The other one, you have to go out of your way to go to a different store to find it. So it's give and take.
Okay. I'll play devil's advocate with that one. I would argue that a lot of people spend too much money on filter media when they don't need to. I recently read a series of articles. Somebody set up a bunch of tanks to test the filtration capability of various medias, and I think the results confirmed what I suspected. So I don't want it to seem like there's confirmation bias, but like you guys know, I've mentioned before, I do have my background's in cellular biology and physiology, so I kind of confirmed some of the suspicions that I had regarding surface area and different media's ability to oxidize ammonia and nitrites. And it was, to an extent, it was kind of surprising. And at the same time, like I said, it did confirm kind of my beliefs and my experiences. But more or less, what it came down to is, so we have a lot of people are pro ceramic type medias, whether it's the ceramic rings or like technically like your matrix in Biohome is kind of a ceramic type media, where it has a lot of, they claim it has a lot of surface area, and to an extent it does. However, with that in mind, it's, they like to show off almost electronic scanning microscope images of their media to show you how much surface area we have. And from a science standpoint, seeing stuff like that's pretty cool. However, from a practicality standpoint, not all that surface area is necessarily usable for bacterial colonization and ultimately biological filtration. So when you have such small surface area that even bacteria, which are hundreds of times larger than like the ammonia compound cells, ammonia compounds, like the actual chemical structure is, if the bacteria can't colonize that surface area because the surface area exists, but it's in such a small space, then that surface area is not really doing you anything beneficial. Okay? And furthermore, if that surface area is small, it's going to clog easy, even if you have, super fine foam or some sort of polishing type media in there before you get to that biomedia. That surface area is not doing you any good. And the results actually confirmed that. And various sponge or foam type medias, whether it's even a 20 ppi, which so foams are generally rated in terms of pores per inch, or ppi. So your larger, more coarse foams are going to be like your 10s or your 20s. Your finer foams are going to get 30, 40, 50, and so on. So the medium range foams, like the 20s and 30s there, they have a great amount of surface area while still allowing water to flow through them. And so you have surface area for bacterial colonization, which is great. Well, and you have enough flow through there that the water, which carries your ammonia, your nitrates, etc., can still pass by those bacteria and offer that biological filtration. So like I said, the results were pretty interesting, and he actually quantified it. And not only did he quantify it in the study, but he related it to its ability to keep X number of fish. And he did so by measuring the ammonia produced from that fish waste using, he controlled the food. So he used the same group of fish and controlled the food so that it had more or less the same bioload. And even
you should share that link so everybody in chat can read it later.
I'll see if I can find that link for you. But even a 20 ppi foam, which is, it's fairly coarse, had much more effective surface area. So surface area that could actually execute the biological filtration by being colonized by the bacteria and having water flow, so those bacteria could access the nutrients in the water. Even a 20 ppi foam had much more effective surface area and much more biological filtration capability than your matrix or your biohome. And you can obtain foams like that from, I said, various sources, where they're using the fancy, like the Porette foam from Swiss Tropicals, or some other sources that are a little bit more reasonably priced. And those results, like I said, they were particularly interesting to me and surprising. And it just kind of furthered the idea in my head that people spend, a lot of money on filter media that might not be doing them so much good. So I know
what I was gonna say is, yes, the filter media you choose is important for whatever setup you're gonna do, but I rely more on the beneficial bacteria to settle in my tank, like to be in the substrate, to be on the rock. Mm-hmm. Like I'm trying to set up my tank so seated that I could take the filter off if I wanted to without the tank crashing. So
yeah, and that's one of the like I said, it kind of depends on your tank's specific setup. And so if you have let's say if you use like a sand type substrate, a sand substrate doesn't have it compacts a little more. So you're actually, whilst each individual piece of sand may have a high surface area, you don't have a lot of water moving through that sand. So those bacteria can't access those nutrients in the water column. Whereas if you're using like a gravel, so we can talk about under gravel filters and why they're so effective at biological filtration. That gravel has a lot of space between it, which means there's a lot of space for bacterial colonization due to the surface area, as well as that water flowing through there. So under gravel filters are actually great from a biological standpoint and their ability to oxidize ammonia and nitrite.
Yeah, we run under gravel filters in most of our tanks at the store, actually. And it works out great.
Yeah. And you know, under gravel filters, they, like I said, from a biological standpoint, they're great. There is some, you know, work that's specifically associated with an under gravel filter, just because they can kind of turn into nitrate factories, because they trap that detritus, the extra food, etc., down in that substrate, and that's great because it produces a lot of microfauna for your fish to feed on, but it can build up over time and potentially become problematic.
But you know how I make sure those filters are clean? Like, I usually wait till there's like the smallest amount of fish in the tank left, and then we go and stir the heck out of the gravel. And actually lift the plates up. I don't know if you guys in chat know, but under gravel filters, it's basically a giant plastic grid that's like 1/2 inch from the bottom of the glass, where the gravel sits on top of it, and there's a lift tubes, usually 2 to 4 lift tubes on it, that pull basically the water through the gravel back up through the lift tube into the tank. So the gravel is what colonizes the bacteria and the mold and everything.
Right. Yep. So that's kind of my 2 cents on just overall on filter media itself. Obviously, like we said, you're going to have different applications. I know some people like to run chemical filtration type medias, like your Purigen and related, you know, specialty medias. Are those something that you have much experience with, or are those something that you usually recommend, or do you prefer to go about other ways of, as far as the chemical side of things, you know, for nutrient export or removing certain compounds from your water column?
So, I mean, of course, we sell a lot of different types of filter medias at the fish store. We sell all the pads that have like the infused pads, the nitrate reducing pads, the phosphate reducing pads, the carbon pads. And then we also sell Matrix from Seachem, or what's the other one? The Marine Pure blocks, the big blocks you can put in. Carbon, of course. And for example, I had today a customer come in. He set his saltwater 75-gallon saltwater tank up 3 weeks ago, and it's still cycling. And he got turbo start everything, did everything right, and we just couldn't figure out why it's still cycling. And then it turned out that he keeps putting carbon in his sump. And I mean, carbon breaks down a lot of things, even good things, bad things. And it just it seems like it's taking longer to cycle. So he's pulling the carbon out, and I'm sure as soon as he does, it will cycle somewhat faster.
Okay. And you know, I know some people still suggest it, but it seems like it's kind of more of a thing of the past. How do you feel about using activated carbon in your filters?
I'm not a fan of carbon at all, because the only time I use carbon is when I medicate a tank and I want to get that medicine out.
Okay. Like, yeah, and I agree completely.
Yeah, if it's freshwater or salt water, I usually have those little reaction internal corner filters I will use and just put on a tank with pure carbon in it and just let that run. I mean, I personally prefer stuff like a resin, like Purigen, and that kind of stuff when it comes to filter media additives.
Okay. And I agree completely. I know a lot of people, there's different companies that actually sell cartridges that specifically fit their filters that include activated carbon, and they recommend you change those out often. And that's because the useful life of most of the activated carbon is fairly short. And I would say generally, without really doing a science type project on it, I would estimate 2 to 3 weeks of actual usable effects from the carbon itself.
Yeah, it's about 2 weeks, and after that it just turns into porous filter media. I mean, which isn't wrong either if you use actual carbon. But people think that it actually cleans their tank, and I always tell the people too, like, just buy a regular sponge pad and you don't have to spend all that money on buying these cartridges. Even though I'm selling those cartridges, I should be selling them.
And and that's great that you can find. Obviously, when you run a store and when you work at a store, your job is to make money for the store, because at the end of the day, that's how you stay in business, right?
Yes.
But it's nice to hear people giving real-time practical advice, because there's a lot of products on the market that really have very little usefulness for their price, and it's kind of a money grab out there, and we can get in those a different day, but exist. I want to point out this comment from Dragon Layer quick. He said he has a drain on the bottom of his tank with the undergravel filter, so when he does a water change, he drains and it pulls some of the detritus and stuff that's under that plate out. And I think that's a pretty neat setup. I've never actually seen anybody do that. I've seen people that run like airline down the uplift tubes, so they don't have to pull up the substrate, pull up the grate to get some of that stuff out of there. But that's a pretty interesting technique. And Dragon Layer, I know you found me on Facebook the other day. If you could post some pictures of that, maybe if you're in the Get Gills group, post some pictures of that setup. That would be pretty interesting to see. I'd be curious to see exactly how that works. Rescue Dog Treats asked, Priscilla, if I send you a photo, can you create an art piece? I'm thinking of having my Biotodoma Cupid cichlids painted. Those are cute little fish.
That sounds like interesting. Email me. Wait, I put my email in chat.
Yeah, if you could, Priscilla, drop her email in chat. I believe she does have a contact option on her website at swissaquatics.com. Check her out there, and she can definitely get in touch with you. Terry's Tropical Tanks mentioned carbon has its uses, and the cheap freshwater carbon is junk. Try Rock's 8 carbon. Stuff is awesome. Carbon does have its uses. I personally, myself, I don't run it unless I'm trying to remove something specific from the water column, and that's how I generally advise using it. Somebody mentioned Purigen and carbon for removing tannins from water. If you don't want necessarily the black water look, or if you have some wood in your tank and you don't necessarily want that gold tint to it, Purigen and carbon both seem to be fairly effective at doing so.
So let's talk about Purigen. I mean, Purigen is just resin, basically. And there's other companies that make similar things. Just like Chemiclean has a like green one, which is Purigen as well. Seachem has some other ones that are resin based, and the resin just will soak up things, basically. The Purigen does it too, so that's why you can recharge the Purigen if you clean it. And in the back there's like instructions that says like put it in a pint of water with some bleach and then dechlorinate it. You can reuse it. Where you can't reuse carbon, really. If it's not active anymore, it's just not active anymore. But at least the Purigen you can reuse a few times, at least 2-3 times. I've done that before. It's just the process of recharging it.
Right.
But
and Purigen, I'm sorry,
phosphates too. Like in saltwater, phosphates is a huge thing. If you have too many phosphates in the tank, you get too much algae. So where the resin comes really handy, breaking down the phosphate.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of options out there for medias like that. I personally, for the chemical filtration side of things, you guys know I love Planet Tanks. I also use saltwater macroalgae for nutrient export, not just to absorb things, but nutrient export. for your planted tanks are going to uptake those nitrates for their own growth. And at the end of the day, after they grow to your desired aesthetics, you can trim those, and all those nutrients that your plants removed from your tank, you're basically, when you trim those off, you're taking those nutrients and moving them somewhere else. And a saltwater tank is the same, whether it's through a protein skimmer or macroalgae. Both methods, you're actually using something to remove those components from your tank and clean up the water a little bit.
So Tian Aqua asks, is red lava rock okay to use, or is it dyed? Do you mean the red lava rock from like Home Depot or Lowe's, the one you can buy for like fire pits or landscaping or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
That's just red lava rock.
Yep.
It's porous rock. It's natural porous rock.
Yep. And I use, so I don't necessarily use lava rock in a filter of any sort. I do use it to build up my scapes under like if I use like an aqua soil type, I'll throw that red lava rock in there because it's not heavy. It takes up a lot of space, and I can get the contours and stuff in the tanks. And that's, like I said, it's easy to find. It's cheap, and it seems to work well. I know a lot of people run it in their filters. It's porous. I don't run it in my filter, but it seems like some people have had success with it.
So I see Terry's Tropical Tank says, if you want to see if your water is clean, put it in a white bucket, and you see how clear it actually is. And then he also says, since I started the carbon reactor on my reef, the water is crystal. So between freshwater and saltwater, filtration there's quite the differences, because saltwater is super alkaline, so it's super hard.
Mm-hmm.
And freshwater is just neutral to soft. And ammonia turns into ammonia much quicker in alkaline water. So that's why I usually use more filtration on a saltwater tank, why people usually have media reactors. They either run like resin or carbon or K1 media, whatever they prefer.
Right. And I feel like that's one thing that you see a lot more in the saltwater industry, and it's really interesting. They do a little bit more generally with their water chemistry, like running GFO reactors, carbon reactors, etc. And I don't foresee any of that spilling over into freshwater tanks anytime soon. But some of the equipment that they use and some of the methods that they use to handle nutrient imbalances in the saltwater tanks are pretty interesting.
Yeah, like a calcium reactor is the best thing in saltwater. If you try to grow a reef that has like SPS hard corals that need a lot of calcium and magnesium,
right,
you run a calcium reactor.
Mm-hmm. And just real quick for those, I know it seems like most of the streams that I'm involved in lean heavily towards the freshwater side, but can you kind of fill in people that don't know or aren't familiar with calcium reactors, just what they do or how they work and why you do use one?
So most calcium reactors, it's just a big tube where you put crushed coral in, and then you blast it with CO2, which makes it dissolve calcium and magnesium, and that will release into the tank. And certain corals that have a hard base will require calcium and magnesium in order to grow. So I think that's the easiest way to explain it.
Yeah. A friend of mine had a 210 reef, and it was largely small polyp stonies. So most of your sticks, like your acroporas and stuff. And the growth that he saw after adding a calcium reactor was just mind-boggling. Like I equate it to, I'd say it's equivalent of adding CO2 to a planted tank. Now you might not see the 10 times growth that you see in plants. But for a reef, the growth rate that you see by adding a calcium reactor is off the charts.
Yep.
So Kira asked, she said, I have too much phosphorus. Does Purigen take that out? So we're probably looking at phosphates right now.
Yes, it will. Resin will absorb Purigen. And somebody earlier was saying polyfill. I mean, that's one of my favorite filter medias to use just because it's so fine. It actually polishes the water really well.
Mm-hmm. So Terry's Tropical Tank said, if you knew how hard my freshwater is, you might rethink that. If you can just leave a comment in the chat, I'll look out for that. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I think you left that while we were talking about calcium reactors, so I'm not positive. George Costanza. Hey, George. Hope you're doing well tonight. He said he has liquid rock as well. So I believe they're probably talking about hard water, but maybe they can clear that up for us here. Sean said, purely out of curiosity, how much would I be looking at for a frogfish setup? So not filtration related, but it depends. It depends. If you just want a frogfish with some rock, you can get into it a lot cheaper than if you want like even some soft corals in there. So
Yep.
there's a lot of variables in there. If you just wanted, I would say, now I'm not super familiar with frogfish. I'm just going based on kind of what I've seen. If you did, I think you could fit one fine in like a 30 or 40 gallon tank. So you could start with dry rock to save you some money there. So the tank, the rock, you wouldn't necessarily need a sump on it, depending on the amount of rock that you add in there, because your rock's going to do most of your biological filtration. Some power heads and a light. I don't see you spending more than, a few $100. What do you think, Priscilla? Pretty doable?
I mean, it all depends on what type of frogfish you get. There's some frogfish that are like tiny, like your thumbnail, and you can do multiple in a setup. And then there's some frogfish that are like giant, scary looking.
Yeah.
So if you go with like a medium-sized frogfish, I would say, you could probably set up like a 20, 30 gallon and just regular filtration, like a tidal or something on a 30 gallon cheap tank, and you'd be good. So maybe like after sand and rocks and everything, I'd probably say $100, $120 cheapest, up to $200 depending on how advanced or how involved you want to be with the setup.
Right. I would say largely the challenge in setting up a frogfish tank might just be finding a frogfish itself.
Yeah, I haven't seen them in a while. I had some a few months ago, but I haven't seen them since.
So Greg the Guppy guy asked about wet dry setups. He says he's got 2 of them from the 80s that he used for cichlids. I owned a wet dry setup for a short time just because I got it with a tank that I bought. I never set it up. It's basically a sump that has a trickle feature through it. They seem to they work just fine. I don't personally have a ton of experience. Like I said, they're being phased out just because there are better options out there. I think the advantage of a wet dry setup, and you might see it in some of the fish farms. I know they use like a pool filter sand, like a sand type filter, as well as a wet dry. You do get the extra oxygenation from the wet dry that's definitely beneficial.
I don't like wet dry filters. I don't like anything that trickles like that.
Just noisy.
Yeah. Sean OT says, really figured it would be a lot more. Yeah, like I said, that's like your cheapest option. If you want to have a nice looking tank and you want to add some corals and you want to add a little skimmer and all that stuff, you'll be like at $500, $1,000. It really all depends on what you want to do.
Yep. And let me see if I can scroll up and find it here. Bottom Dwellers asked if he can use distilled water to lower his TDS.
Do you want to go on a TDS?
We can go there. He said, I thought so, but wasn't sure. Distilled water is more or less the same as RO water, right? To an extent, yep. And you can definitely cut your tap water with RO or distilled. There are some subtle differences. But if you're simply trying to lower your TDS and potentially soften your water, yes, you can cut your tap water or your current water source, whatever that might be, with RO. So if you're trying to breed some of the softer water species, like a pistos, it's definitely an option. You can, and I don't want to discourage you from just mixing tap water with RO water, because a lot of people do it and a lot of people have success. I personally work with, I either use tap water or an RO that I remineralize, because then I can dial it in a little more precisely and just have a little more control over it.
So, I mean, the TDS, if your TDS is too high and you want to lower it, the question is, why is your TDS too high? I mean, TDS means
Right.
total dissolved solids. Your TDS could be high because you have too many nitrates. So if you add water, you're just doing a water change at that point. Or your TDS could be too high because you have too many minerals in your water. So the question is really, why is your TDS too high before you tackle it?
I personally use TDS, and like you mentioned, some people may be wondering what TDS is, total dissolved solids. So the actual, it's a rough estimate based on the electric conductivity of your water. So, and most people, like you'll see a lot of shrimp people that reference TDS, and usually they're talking about GH and KH specifically, which is general hardness and carbonate hardness. And that's more or less, is your water hard because of calcium or magnesium? So TDS can be, TDS can be useful. I see you, Patty. It can be useful, but don't use it as, just the sole indicator of your water quality.
And he says it's after adding fertilizer. I mean, every time you add a fertilizer, right, especially if it's an all-in-one fertilizer, you're adding nitrogen to your tank, which will bring your TDS up. So your TDS being higher doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing if it's just the fertilizer.
And keep in mind, a lot of fertilizers, so if you're dosing dry salts, like I know Colin offers a specific fertilizer package that includes a GH buffer. So you're going to get a little magnesium, or some fertilizer packages may include like some calcium bicarbonate. So you're going to get a little more calcium, and that'll increase your hardness too, which obviously affects your TDS. S asked, when is it ever practical for a sump system? A sump system is a great option for, I generally think, if you're going to spend, there's a price point for it. And I personally think that price point is generally about 75 gallons. Once you go bigger than 75 gallons, you can set up a sump that will be cheaper, far more effective, easier to work on, and offer a lot more flexibility than something like a canister. Now, a sump can be daunting because you may either go with a hang-on back overflow, which has the potential to break siphon and flood your floor, or you're looking at drilling a tank. Now, reef-ready tanks, which are already drilled, so they're drilled for a generally a drain line going to the sump and a return line to return that water back to your display tank, are becoming more common these days. But the advantage of a sump, like I said, they're a lot easier to work on. You can work on it while the tank's running. You don't have to open up that canister and deal with tearing a canister apart. You can fit whatever media you want in it. You can hide as much equipment as you need to, whether that's a carbon reactor. If you're running CO2, you can plumb that in there. Let's not flood our floors. You can keep your heaters down in there. You can swap out whatever media. Some people set up like refugiums. Like if you have let's say a 125 and you have Mbuna cichlids in there, so they don't play nice with plants, you can keep plants in your sump to control like your nitrates and your phosphates. So that's definitely an advantage to the sump. I bring up the price point because a sump, you're adding water volume, you're increasing the likelihood of having more stable water by increasing the water volume. You'll see salty guys run huge sumps. They may have a 75-gallon display, but they'll run a 150-gallon sump because they can fit a lot of live rock in there, which increases your biological filtration capability, and it increases the water volume, which will ideally increase the stability because it takes a lot more to cause a swing in your water parameters.
So one thing to Geek Boy's comment, but flooded floors are so much fun. Like a lot of people think that if they're gonna get a sump, they're gonna flood their house, which is not true at all, because you just have to pick the right sump and make sure the sump will hold the excess water for the case your pump will turn off. And there's a way you can calculate that, and you can test it. I mean, you can plug out the pump and see how far the sump is going to go up. And if it's going to overflow, then you have to adjust your overflow or your water level. So it's kind of like,
like you said, I think that scares a lot of people. But if you do, it's not a super complex concept to wrap your mind around. It's not super hard to learn about. There's a lot of information out there about designing your own overflows and running a sump. And I think it used to maybe be a little bit difficult when we didn't have DC pumps to control flow rates. But now that you have a DC pump, you can crank that bad boy up or turn it down and achieve whatever you want running a sump. Geek Boy says saltwater flooded floors are even more fun. I've got a friend in Omaha, Nebraska that used to run a local shop, and they kept track of how many times they flooded. They had a big cube. It was like 3 by 3 by 3, but they had a tally on the side of it that all the customers could see of how many times they'd flooded it.
And I mean, the reason why people like sumps is because you can put much more filter media in there.
It gives you way more room.
Volume, yeah.
And dollar for dollar. So a lot of people, once you start getting into big tanks like a 125 or a 180, I see, people mention like an FX6. An FX6, unless you get it for a great sale price, is super expensive. A sump that will offer you, so you can set up so if you're running, we'll say a 180. So you could run a 20 long or a 40 breeder. You can get both of them for about the same price. It can be used. You don't need a brand new tank. You can get a return pump for a decent price, put whatever media you want in it, and glue in some silicone in some baffles real quick. You can have a sump that will outperform an FX6 any day of the week for less money.
Yeah, I don't sell that product, and I don't want to talk about it.
Dave asked if you can keep more fish in your sump. Definitely. So if you have fish that spawn in your main display tank, you can remove the fish and you can place those in your sump. And those fry can grow out there where they're in the exact same water parameters. Or you can keep shrimp in your sump. And you can get into, you see it a lot more with saltwater people, but like a refugium type setup.
Yep. Oh, speaking of sump, I built a sump out of a 29-gallon myself for my 125 freshwater tank, and I'm gonna plant the whole thing, and I'm gonna put the CO2 into the return line of the sump. Instead of having the equipment in the tank, it's gonna be in the sump. Same goes for the heater. So a lot of the time it's looks, especially in saltwater, you use all that extra equipment like a skimmer, a reactor, a heater, everything. All that stuff you can put in a sump instead of having it in your tank.
And I know a lot of people, like planted folks, ask, well, aren't you off-gassing a ton of CO2 running a sump? And I would say, generally speaking, no. You're not going to use you may use a little extra that off gases, but the amount is negligible. I sure wouldn't not run CO2 or not run a sump just because of the idea.
Right. And a lot of people do actually breed stuff in their sumps. In saltwater, it's a lot of people actually put a light on there, and it's called a refugium, where you grow algae in there. In freshwater, you can do the same thing. You could put Java moss in your sump, and it will create all this excess nutrients your tank's creating. So it's kind of a win-win situation if you have a sump set up the right way.
Right, and that's a great idea. And I think a lot of people are just afraid of sumps just because you don't see them often. You can't it's less often to just go buy a sump setup. Sometimes you have to do a little design work in it and put it together yourself. But the options, a sump offers you so many more options. Like you said, you can put moss in a sump and suck up some of your nitrates and phosphates. That way you can put shrimp down in there in the sump. And like I said, you can customize it to fit whatever your needs are. And that's a great benefit. Bottom Dwellers asked about all-in-one systems. He said he might get one if he does salt, if he ever does a salt tank. Do you guys sell a lot of all-in-ones like the BioCubes?
Yes.
Or those types of setups? You do?
I'm selling 20-gallon JBJ all-in-ones all day long, every day.
Okay. And
it's an easy tank. It's pretty inexpensive too. It's like $179. It's a tank, the filtration, and the mat. It's rimless, and it basically overflows, goes down underneath the baffle into the filtered media, back to the return chamber, where there's a little pump pushing it back into the tank. So it's basically a sump behind the tank.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like they're gaining popularity. They look clean, generally speaking. You don't have the equipment hanging off the back of the tank. You don't have so many cords. A lot of them, like the BioCubes, are more of like a lidded setup where it has the lid on it, whereas the JBJ is a rimless setup where you'd use like a clip-on light or you'd suspend a light over it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, they make even up to like 100 gallons all in ones if you really wanna like go big or whatever. Like one of the really popular size too is the 65-gallon JBJ all in one. It's a 3-foot tank. It's like a 40 breeder almost, just a little bit taller.
Okay. Yeah. Kira said she made a refugium without even knowing what it was. It was all plants with water running through it. Yeah, and a lot of people experiment. A sump doesn't always have to be below the tank. There's some people that set up overhead sumps. So there's a lot of options out there. I would recommend do your research, ask somebody that's familiar. Most local shops have somebody that knows a lot about setting up sumps. And if you have like a reef group near you or a saltwater group, saltwater guys set up and build sumps and design overflows all the time. They're a great resource. Like I said, I think they're undervalued and underseen in the freshwater side of things.
But my personal favorite filter is a sponge filter because I like to keep shrimp and I like them to not get sucked into any mechanical filtration.
Right. Terry said he's out. The Hawks lost. Sorry they lost, bud. Have a good night. Thanks for tuning in. Bottom Bowler's overhead refugium along the back of my 55 would be cool. In the saltwater world, you'll see people use like an AquaClear 110 pretty often as a refugium. Actually, I've seen they'll put like like miracle mud in it and maybe some macroalgae, and just have it like a little hang on back refugium type setup if they don't want to move it down into the sump.
So, did you ever use Miracle Mud?
I have not. It was it's one of those things that I've never used, and you don't see very many people talk about. I know it's still offered, or at least I think it's still offered. So I don't know a whole lot about it actually.
I have Miracle Mud in one of my sumps at the store, and it's kind of sand, like really powdery fine sand that's really heavy for some reason. So it like settles pretty easy, but I feel like you could just use regular sand as well. But that's just me.
Yeah, and we got into kind of some of the nerdy filtration stuff. I know you mentioned your personal favorite filter is a sponge filter, and that kind of goes back. I mentioned that I think a lot of people overpay for filter media by going with some of the ceramic media that's available just because of the marketing hype behind it. If you look at a lot of the large breeding rooms where people keep a ton of fish in small tanks, yes, they're doing water changes often, but they're all running sponge filters. I mean, you kind of think they're onto something, not just because it's cheap, but because it's effective enough to handle the bioload of having an excessive, borderline excessive amount of fish in a fairly small tank for what they are.
I think it's more the convenience if you have multiple tank syndrome. I mean, just imagine, I got like 50-something tanks. If I would have, I love hang-on back filters. I really do. I mean, I got 2 running back there. I don't know if you can hear them, but they're actually super trickly. If I would have 50 hang-on back filters, I mean, that would be a little toll on my power bill, or just on the power in general.
Yeah, and that's definitely a factor when you consider your filtration selection. Is how much is it going to cost to run this long term? Something like a sponge filter in itself, you're going to pay maybe $10 for the filter, and then an air pump, depending on what air pump you decide to go with, can run it and last a long time with no maintenance. That sponge isn't very likely to break down. The plastic components aren't very likely to break. Whereas something like a canister filter, I've had a variety of canister filters over the years, and the amount of impellers that I've replaced is, not a good thought to think about.
Yeah.
And that happens for a variety of reasons. And they're just finding the parts isn't super cheap.
And the maintenance on it too. There's certain filters, canister filters. Every time I know I have to clean them, I'm like throwing a fit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find somebody else that's gonna clean that filter.
Right. And I know most of the designs are. It's like if you look at the APIs, or well, I guess the Reina series, they were the Fill Stars for a while, but and the Aquatops, I know for sure it's a top loading design. So you have to disconnect it, take the whole thing somewhere where you can clean it, dump it out, change out, like rinse each basket as required, do what you need to do. And it can become a chore. I can do a water change on 25 tanks in less than an hour, but as soon as I have to clean a canister filter out, it turns into a big job
chore,
for
yeah.
me. It's not something I want to deal with. Some people are like, oh, I don't mind. And that's an advantage of hang-on back filters, is they're generally pretty cheap. They're usually fairly effective. Some of them offer a lot of media room, and it's super easy to change. You can leave the canister filter on the tank, you pick up your basket of media, or you pull individual media out, and you rinse it, you do whatever you need to do, and you're on your way.
Yeah. But I mean, if I would set up just a single tank for a community tank and I would want it to look nice, like besides having multiple tanks, I probably would go with either a hang-on back filter or a sump, actually.
Okay. Over a canister?
Yes, but before I would do a canister. And there's certain canister filters I wouldn't even use if I would get them for free.
Okay.
Just because they're hard to clean.
Yeah. Kira said she likes to use plastic scrubbies and sponge. I know you mentioned you like to use polyfill. It's all cheap. I just think, obviously most of us don't have an endless budget. I think for the money, generally speaking, your money is better spent elsewhere. And the numbers show, I'll link that article in the description. The numbers show that some of the cheaper medias are, a lot more effective from a biological standpoint compared to some of the expensive ones like your Matrix, your Biohome. And then I kind of briefly mentioned mechanical filtration. Your foam types, your pot scrubbers, not only do they offer the biological based on the surface area, but they offer a great amount of mechanical filtration, where your Matrix, your Biohome, your lava rock, your ceramic rings, those generally aren't going to offer the mechanical side of things. So why not kill two birds with one stone? A lot of if you're running a canister, if you're running a hang-on back, you have limited space as to how much media you can fit up in there.
Jeffrey Watt says Oase Biomaster is the best canister I've used, but then again, it's the only one I've used. I know that filter is really good, and if I would use a canister filter, I probably would use actually that one, but I feel like it's a little bit too expensive for a canister filter.
Okay.
Because it's it takes a heater too. You can put a heater in the canister filter.
Mm-hmm. And I know some of the canister filters have heaters in them now, like the Oase. Some of them have, like Aquatop offers some models with a UV sterilizer. So they are making changes, and they're getting better where they allow you to hide some more equipment in them. Again, I think the maintenance is still kind of a pain, and they can be expensive. I haven't personally used an Oase. It seems like I hadn't heard of Oase until George Farmer started using them a little bit more on his setups, I think.
Yeah. Now I heard
seems like it's a little more of a European thing.
I've never used it, but I mean, it sounds like it's a great filter.
Yeah, it does sound like it's super high quality, and it just depends on what you'd like to do. Dragon Layer said he's always done underground filters and hang-on backs, but I'm now doing a sponge filter with a few hang-on backs. He bought a linear piston pump. Got to get my money's worth. Linear piston pumps running sponge filters are great. Even if you don't have a ton of sponge filters, a linear piston pump offers you, reliability, and it doesn't. If you look at the power usage for a linear piston compared to running several smaller diaphragm pumps, you're saving money there for sure.
Yeah. So Patty also asked, could you use UV sterilizers just sometimes? if you don't have a reason to run a UV sterilizer 24/7, don't.
I agree. So you can use it sometimes. It's one of those things that's nice to have on hand. I've personally found that a UV sterilizer is an easy fix for green water whenever you encounter green water, or if you have some sort of pathogen, like if you have ick, it'll help remove some of it while it's free floating in the water column. But
Yes.
yeah, you don't have to run it all the time.
So actually, let me correct this. If you have a pond, a UV sterilizer is great, so your pond stays clear. Run it 24/7. If you have a saltwater tank with a lot of expensive fish, run the UV sterilizer 24/7 because it's kind of a fail safe. Because in saltwater, if you get ick or any weird parasite, they might all die within 24 hours. So you better let your UV run. But in a regular freshwater tank where you don't overstock it, don't have issues, there's no reason to use it.
Right, yep. Bomb Roller Cities might draw up the plans for a pond tonight and film it to show us what his plan is. There's a lot of options for pond filtration too, and I've never set up a pond myself. I know Dave from Dave Aquarium Thoughts has a pond, and it looks like, I believe he used like a 55-gallon barrel to kind of build a filtration system out of. So check that out, talk to him, see what he thinks about that, see what he would do differently if he were to do it again. Shiva Me Timbas, big fan of Oazi. Yeah, I haven't used them. I like them. From what I've seen, I like them. Rave reviews, seems to be well built, quality parts. Just haven't used one. Patty, on UV sterilizers, Patty said she wants to keep the tank disinfected to kill disease.
I mean, if you have a tank where you don't put fish in there that are not quarantined on a regular basis, and you know your fish are healthy, then you don't really have any disease coming up anytime soon. Does that make sense?
Right. She asked if she could kill columnaris if she used it regularly. Would it reduce the odds of having a columnaris problem?
I mean, of course it would reduce the odds, but then also the question is, what kind of UV sterilizer are you going to use? I mean, there's different wattages, different pressure going through UVs, different. Like if you buy a cheap 3-watt UV sterilizer and you put that in like your canister filter inline, if you get disease, you're going to get disease. I don't think it's going to actually kill things. And then you can spend $400 on a really good UV sterilizer that probably will keep your water cleaner than a hospital.
Right. And I'd say so UV sterilizers could potentially have their drawbacks. From a micro critter point of view, you have a lot of pods and little things running around your tank that you might not necessarily see or see as a benefit, but they are highly beneficial both for, as a tank matures. One of the benefits is that you get a lot of microfauna running around in your tank to help break down detritus, to feed your fish, etc. If you run a UV sterilizer, those critters can run through that UV sterilizer and get nuked pretty easily as well. So just something to think about. I said, may or may not be a factor in your decision. Dragon Layer said no sterilizers for him. His green water's for his rainbow fry. I hear you. I keep a separate tank of green water running all the time. In my opinion, I've had more luck successfully raising rainbow fry just because they're small size. Feed them green water. It's definitely a game changer.
I mean, speaking of green water, usually around between March and July, every once in a while somebody comes in my store and goes like, my pond is green. And it's like, I know your pond is green. Everybody's pond's green right now. Just because of all the pollen in the air and whatever, just because of it's spring, There's a lot of new microorganisms in the air that will get into your water, which cause green water. And then often people use just algae fix, which is fine to use in a pond outdoors. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it. Use it in your aquarium if you have a lot of plant and stuff or sensitive stuff. But then, back to the whole pond thing. It's a kind of different animal anyway. And that's kind of heavy. UV sterilizers, for me, are kind of like heavy equipment when it comes to aquariums. And if you don't really have like a good reason to use it, don't.
Okay. Jeffrey, I know Patty was talking about trying to maybe inhibit some columnaris with the UV sterilizer. Jeffrey Watts said columnaris, ugh, the guppy killer. Just real quick, we had a couple people mention, what would you suggest for treating columnaris?
I would suggest what's it called? I would use furan.
Furan, okay.
And then if that doesn't do anything, I would go levamisole, which you can go to Select Aquatics, Greg Sage.
Okay, and he offers levamisole?
Yeah, he has a whole page, a link where he sells the levamisole, and he also explains the whole levamisole situation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like I said, I've told you before, people in the stream I'm sure have heard, meds aren't exactly my strong suit, so it's definitely something that I'd like to personally, I need to step up my game there. I just haven't had to, deal with it a lot. So, but here's Select Aquatics, Greg Sage's site, and kind of what you get when you purchase some levamisole from him. I mean, 10 gram packet treats 500 gallons. So, for $25, seems like you're off to a good start. Greg Sage, good dude, super helpful.
You can buy it from Amazon too. I mean, it's available everywhere. Patty also asked, what about medication for a beta with pop eye? I thought Maricin 2 and Canaplex. I'm mailing medication to a friend in need to get this right. So pop eye is a microbacterial infection, and it can be caused by a lot of things. Like it can be transferred, it can be water quality, it can be a tons of things. But you want to use anything that has metronidazole in it. Like General Cure has metronidazole in it, Metroplex. Maricin does not have Metroplex in it. Maricin is erythromycin. So instead of using Maricin, I would use Fritz Paraclans, because that has Metro and Praziquantel in it.
Okay. And Rocco's mentioned using medicated fish foods or soak-in foods and meds. He said he's had a little better success with it. How do you feel about medicated foods? Or
yes, if you know what you're doing with your medication, yes, use medicated foods. But I know a lot of people tend to put too much medication into the food.
Right.
And I basically say a good rule is take whatever you feed your fish in 5 days. Like you can portion that out, whatever you feed your fish in 5 days, right? And then take whatever you would treat them at one dosage. So if it says on that, for example, the Paraclans, the Maricin, the XLP, like one package is 10 gallons. So if you have a 10-gallon tank, just take a package and put it into the food that you feed in let's say a week even. Just don't feed them more medicine than what you would use treating the water.
Okay. And I'd say
if you do the whole amount, it's a lot of medicine. I would even say even half of that is usually enough.
Right. And I think Dan over at dansfish.com, he did a stream and we got into talking about medicines, and you see better results generally when you treat the food, or when you feed a medicated food or a treated food versus treating a water column. And I think you can just relate that to when we take medicines for whatever we've got going on, we ingest it because it absorbs better into our systems. I mean, sure, we could, fill the bathtub with amoxicillin and go soak in it, and sure, you might see, some effects of it, but definitely ingestion is a much better method for treatment. You're going to use a lot less of it. Like you said, you wouldn't treat so much. You use a lot less of the medicine.
Yeah, when I say use as much as you would treat the tank. I mean, if you have a 125-gallon tank with one big fish in there, don't use 125 gallons worth of medicine for his food.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
that would be a lot of medicine. It doesn't take that much. You should just start out with one of those 10-gallon packages with like a 4-ounce cup or 2-ounce cup of food. And that's usually pretty good.
Patty said she binds the meds to the food with focus. I saw a few new folks stop in. Jeffrey Watts, you've been hanging out for a while. Hey, man. Aquaballs. George, thanks for tuning in. Crown Tail Half Moon, hello. Stopping in. We've been an hour into it. We kind of just derailed the topic here. We've been talking about filtration, different filtration options, and some filter media type stuff. Currently, if you missed the conversation, we're talking about treating with some medications. George said he doesn't feel so hot.
Of meds with food. If you put powder medication onto pellets or flakes, they don't really absorb it. The pellets or flakes won't absorb the medication. It's more coating the medication.
Right. So would you soak it?
Yeah, it will dissolve as soon as it hits the water. It will dissolve. So usually when I feed medicated foods, I actually do frozen food. And I let it soak in the frozen food.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess, kind of the downside to feeding food is you don't know exactly how much of the medicine was absorbed in the food. You don't know exactly how much that fish is getting before it, releases into the water column, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, of course, you can add a little bit water to it or other liquid medications to it in order to make it bind better. But at the end of the day, depending on what type of food you use, if it's something fluffy or something dense, I mean, not all that medication will be absorbed into the food, dry food you're using. That's why I like to use the frozen, because I take a couple cubes, put them with a tiny bit of water in a jar, add the food to it, let it sit for like 15 minutes, stir it, and then dump the whole thing into the tank. So whatever didn't get soaked up in the frozen food, it still will be in the water column.
Okay. Papa Shrimp's in the house. What's up, man? HC Aqua says he's setting up tanks. Sorry he's late. Hey, Jesse. Scott's Aquatics. Hello. Now, here's one, and this is something I haven't done yet. Anthony's Fishy Friends said to use Repashy.
Yeah, which is good, too. It binds it really well.
Yeah. Crown Tail Half Moon asked if you can force feed with a syringe to treat fish.
No, because the fish, the harm you will do to fish with feeding them is more than the benefit of giving them the medication.
Okay.
So I would not recommend doing that.
Geek Boy said he realized Select Aquatics is his neighbor. Better go knock on the door. Geek Boy, if you go knock on his door, let me know how that goes. I'd love to stop by.
I've been there before. That place is epic. Like, he's not gonna let you in right now just because of the current situation we're in. But if you ever get the chance to go into his basement, it will blow your mind.
Okay.
I actually made a video. I think I did. I put it on my channel. Was it 2 or 3 years ago?
Okay. Crown Tail Half Moon said Ted's fish room. So Ted Judy has a couple methods he uses with Repashy meds. I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen those videos out. I've met Ted in person. Super cool guy. Super knowledgeable. He's got a lot of stories. So now we initially started talking about filtration, right? And we sidetracked to medication. So you medicated your fish. What potential harm do some of those medications have on your filtration? And what would you do to remove those medications once you're through with them?
That's a long answer. Any gram-negative medication will kill some of your beneficial bacteria. Like Metro will kill some of your beneficial bacteria. So not every bacterial medicine will kill your beneficial bacteria, but I mean, take it into consideration. It could somewhat harm it. And then also when you do use medication, back to filtration, don't use carbon at the same time. Otherwise, as soon as that medication passes through that active carbon, there's no more medication because it's breaking it down.
Okay. So great points there. Yeah, you have to be careful, like you said. So some medications will nuke your filter media, and to remove them, activated carbon's a good option to remove them. So make sure you don't have any in your filter when you're dosing. Otherwise, you're just kind of, you're wasting your money and you're not actually executing a successful treatment of your fish, because that's just going to remove the meds as soon as it hits that filter media.
Yeah, but I feel like the medication that actually will attack your beneficial bacteria, it's if you dose it accordingly to what it says on the package, you're not going to add enough medication to crash your cycle if you have a well-established tank.
Okay. Rocco's Fish Room, you could use carbon to remove medications as well. Yeah, sure thing. And we talked about filters and filter media, and we talked about using substrate. You're colonizing that substrate, whatever it may be, with some sense of beneficial bacteria. But we didn't really talk about either rock, so either live rock in a salt tank, or maybe you have holy rock if you run a cichlid tank, or plants. So your hardscape planted tanks, obviously, plant leaf surfaces have a ton of surface area. So while it's not necessarily a filter or filter media, you can run a tank biologically just by having a lot of plant mass due to all that surface area for your beneficial bacteria. And generally, there's pretty good flow over those leaves. So that's something to consider. And like I said, you see that on the salty side. A lot of saltwater people, all their biological filtration is through the use of rock. Generally, your live rock and your dry rock is pretty porous, has high surface area. So that's something to consider as well.
So Rock, you answered Rocco's question, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had another question. Have you used Chemi Pure Green or Chemi Pure Blue? I like Chemi Pure Green because it's mainly resin. And the Chemi Pure Blue is mainly carbon. So, same thing. I mean, resin won't take out all the good stuff, where carbon just breaks down everything.
Okay. Crowntail Half Moon asked, all things fish, I got a guppy male. I didn't realize until I came home and saw what looks like his guts is out of his body. Can this be cured? It sounds like potentially either worms or prolapse to me.
Yeah.
If you want, I'm not sure if you're on the Get Gills Facebook, Crowntail Half Moon, but if you can post pictures or a video there, or email them to me, mike.allthingsfish@gmail.com. I will gladly check those out, or if you upload them and drop your pictures, the link for your upload in the comments below. I can check those out. If I can't figure it out, we'll get you an answer, because that could be a couple different things, and without seeing it, it's kind of tough to diagnose. And I think a lot of the times people get eager to medicate their fish because they want to help, they want to fix what's wrong. But often I think people are mistreating their fish and using the wrong medications because they didn't have a proper diagnosis to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to harm your fish that much with using the wrong medication. You're going to harm your fish if you overdose the medication.
Mm-hmm. So Anthony said he's actually used a syringe to feed his flower horn some meds. He said not happening again. So that either wasn't successful or it was just a pain in general. Jeffrey Watts, all things fish. So will carbon-infused filter sponges remove meds? Yes, I would say so. As long as there's fairly fresh activated carbon, whether it's embedded in some other type of media or if it's loose in like a media bag, I believe it would.
I mean, again, carbon's only active for about 2 weeks. So after that, it's just filter media, porous filter media.
So Scott's Aquatics commented, and this is a topic that I see come up on occasion, not super often. And he said, if you have a planted tank, you shouldn't be using carbon in your filter because it just pulls the fertilizer out of the water.
Yeah.
So I will, in the comments below, the description of this video, I'm going to go find a link when we're done here. And there's actually a study done on exactly what compounds carbons removes from the water. And the research data shows that the compounds that activated carbon will remove from the water are not anything that we dose. Okay, so at best it's a very extremely completely negligible, very small amount of iron. So it's not pulling your potassium nitrate out of the water for your nitrates. It's not pulling your phosphates out of the water. So your macros and micros, that activated carbon's not pulling any of those out of the water. So you can dose just fine. That carbon's not going to remove.
Yeah, there's filter media that's made to pull out phosphates, which is usually green, and then the carbon's usually black, and then anything nitrate removing is usually gray.
Okay. But yeah, I see, and nothing against you, Scott, nothing at all. But I've seen the research for it. I see that question come up a lot. I've talked to a lot of folks, Kevin Grant, Tom Barr, Dennis Wong. I've spoke with them several times about different, water chemistry situations and what does and doesn't pull our micro and macronutrients out of the water, and activated carbon has little to no effect. So I wouldn't worry about running it. Crown to Laugh Moon asked for my email. I can drop that in the comments here. Stand by one.
So we're over an hour now. We've just been talking. No, but chat has been great. I mean, there were so many questions.
Yeah.
And everything.
So last time we stopped at an hour and kind of opened it up a little bit. Right now, I see that we're still rolling with some good questions. So as long as you have time, Priscilla, I'm more than willing to stick around and talk, and we can chat and see what questions people have and see what we can do to help. Dragon Lair, who's giving away fry? Jesse, are you giving fry away?
What kind of fry? That's the better question.
Oh no. Precious fry.
Like free fish, everybody's jumping, but maybe it's like 20 Oscars.
Right.
You don't know.
Right. Scott said he used the filter with carbon in it. Plants didn't do good. Replaced it with a sponge. Plants doing great now. I mean, if things turned around for you, that's great. I'm glad you got your tank on the right track. But the data suggests, and I mean, obviously, I don't know everything. I haven't tried everything, but in my personal experience, it's had little to no effect. Like I said, that article that I'll link down in the description below later will support that.
I've tried a lot of things, and it's really depending on your setup. If you do a cichlid tank, hard water, no plants versus a planted tank versus a large tank versus a small tank, the filtration is different.
Right. And if it's not broken, don't fix it. I'd always encourage you to try something new. There may be a better way out there. There may be something that works better for you. You may try it and find out that it works worse for you. The majority of what I say, I try to make it clear, whether that's my experience or my opinions, or if it's something that I can actually back up with some data.
And just because something doesn't work out, don't give up. There's another solution.
Right. Yeah. There's always workaround. You may do. So Tom Barr might tell you something, right? And I would, generally speaking, take Tom's advice on planted tanks, but he might tell you to try a technique that doesn't work. So you try maybe a technique that Dennis Wong suggests, and Dennis works. So there's always, you can't predict every variable, and there's no best answer for every situation. Like I said, just with filters, do what works for you. If you find something that works, stick with it. Dragon Lair, I talked to you the other day. I know you said you'd run a bunch of undergravel filters. That works for you. You have success. Stick with it. The only thing I ask, and I try to hold myself to the same standard, is that when you give advice or give somebody an opinion or information, make it clear whether this works for me, this may not work for you. Don't say, this is the answer. or this is a fact if it's something that could be open-ended.
Yeah, but then there's also certain things that are scientifically proven to work out.
Right. So anything that you can support with evidence, please do. And I'll try to do the same. Like I said, I talked about the carbon, not removing your micros and macros. I'll go find that study and I'll post that study below. And the article that I kind of touched on earlier, talking about filter media, I'll go find that study, and that'll definitely be down in the comments so that you guys can check that out. Maybe I misinterpret it. Maybe the study, maybe you look at it and you find a flaw in the study. But I encourage you to go out there. YouTube's nice because it's easy to listen to stuff. You don't have to do so much work. You can work on your tanks while you listen. But there's a lot of reading out there. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of scientific articles. Check those out, and hopefully we can inspire you guys. Whether we say something and you're like, I'm not sure if that's right, and that inspires you to go find evidence to prove that I'm wrong. I will gladly read anything. If you guys want to send me an article or a book or something, I will gladly read it and take a look at it, because I'm always trying to improve myself as well. So I'm here because I'd like to help you guys, but at the same time, I'm here to learn for myself, and I've learned a lot. I've only been around actively on YouTube, I guess, for a month or so, but I've learned a lot from you guys. So I appreciate all you guys' help.
Jesse is doing a giveaway of Bosmani Fry.
Is he? For sure?
Yeah.
Right now or just sometime?
I don't know. You're going to do it here now? Put him on the spot.
Crown Tail Half Moon asked, have you ever kept and sustained paramecium or infusoria cultures? I got to start a culture, but not sure what to do. I personally haven't kept paramecium. If you want to talk about somebody that knows how to keep live food cultures, talk to Preston John, who is, more or less recently, a big name in the hobby because of his success breeding, the Tetraodon Shodeni? Are those little puffers, the Congo spotteds, I think he has?
Tetraodon Shodeni.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Every
puffer is Tetraodon species.
Okay. But I know he keeps paramecium cultures. He keeps some of the craziest cultures that I've ever known somebody to keep because of his puffer fish. So I have not kept paramecium. Infusoria cultures, I usually just start a new one every couple weeks. So if you have questions on how to start one, I can get you started on one. Or you can look at Mark's Aquatics, has a pretty good video series on how to set up an infusoria culture. I think he uses Brussels sprouts. I use like broccoli or lettuce. Some people, I think last week we were talking, some people take up duckweed, and they'll actually run duckweed through like a blender, and they'll use that to get a culture started. So that's an option too. But long term, like I said, I usually just run them for a couple weeks and then I start them over.
If you want to talk to somebody directly about infusoria and whatnot, Big City Bettas, Amber, she's huge on that stuff too. She's a good go-to source, and you can message her actually on Instagram and stuff. And I'm pretty sure she will. Okay. Let me find her Instagram.
She might be a good person. Maybe we can, swindle her and sweet talk her into coming on to a stream one night and talk about live foods and culture in those, and how she incorporates them into her breeding regimes.
Should I call her like right now? And I'd be like, hey, we're on a live stream. Would you mind coming on this live stream at some point? And she can't say no.
Well, I don't want to make her feel obligated, but
well, she's at the East Coast, so it's 11:25 there.
Okay. Crowntail said the link for Passia Meds from Ted. Since you're not a mod, I won't be able to see that in the chat. If you could email it to me or drop it in the comments for the video instead of the chat, that'd be great. Otherwise, like I said, Get Gills on Facebook is a super easy way to get a hold of me. You can find me there if you can't actually search for me.
Geekboy says, I only want to run duckweed through a thermonuclear reaction. I don't like duckweed either. I'm with you.
Kill it with fire. I've actually taken a shop vac to the surface of a tank to try to remove duckweed. A shop vac, yeah, you just hover it over the surface and there she goes.
No way. I want to see that. You're gonna make a video on that.
Oh, when I get home, I'll make a short on duckweed and the shop vac.
That's
Dragon Layer said, Jan Aquarium keeps rotifer cultures to feed his clownfish fry. Yep. So many years ago, I actually had a pair of clowns, and I did get a few spawns out of them. So I did the phyto cultures, I did the rotifer cultures and stuff. We talked about that on he was on Rico Stan's stream the other day, and he talked about those cultures of rotifers. So yeah, I mean, there's, and I think I said it last week, but live foods are so undervalued in the hobby. They can be work, but the benefits are just all over the place.
Here's a link to some Repashy foods by
Duckweed with a fork. Jeffrey Watts, how did you get rid of duckweed with a fork? I'm curious. Has anyone used Azola for feeding fish? I have not. Have you,
Nope.
Priscilla?
No.
Yeah, I personally haven't. Now that Azola, if I'm not mistaken,
I use
is a floating type plant.
Yeah. I use duckweed to feed to my red wiggler worm culture.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. I use duckweed when I want to not sleep at night and have nightmares. My Fish Tanks said, have a great rest of the night, folks. Great info and show. My Fish Tanks, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. Chatted with you a little bit in a few different streams tonight. And it's always a pleasure to have you around. Dave said if he had duckweed, he'd try the shop vac idea.
Yeah, I gotta try this out now. It's not gonna get out of my head till I actually try it. Watch me tomorrow at the store running around with the shop vac.
Apparently, Chattanooga Ed uses a hair pick.
Yeah, it works too.
Scott uses a net. Does the visual of that sound like it would be super satisfying to anyone else seeing a shop? It is. It really is. Like you're just visually like it's gone, and then there's no way it's getting back.
Shrimp do not eat duckweed.
Could you put no? If you played the food grinder game and you crushed it up into like a dry powder, could you? I mean, is that something that they might eat?
Yes, shrimp are all for powder green stuff. If it's dandelion, they love nettles. You know, the stuff that irritates your skin. For some reason, they love that stuff. Anything that's antioxidant. Spinach, a lot of leaves, tree leaves like mulberry and that kind of stuff. Just make powder out of it. Your shrimp will love it.
I know, like some people use like a spirulina powder or a chlorella powder, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any powder green stuff, shrimp love.
And it seems like recently, I mean, in the past couple of years, people have started feeding their shrimp bee pollen. Have you done that?
I haven't tried it yet. I know there's a couple brands out there that make bee pollen, but I mean, I can see where. I mean, a shrimp is a scavenger. It's like whatever falls to the bottom of the river decays.
Okay.
It's food.
Right. Skipper's Aquariums says he's got to get up for work at 4 a.m. Thanks for stopping by, Tom. Appreciate you. I know we had you up last week. It was a great time. Would love to have you up again. I hope you have a good one. Enjoy work tomorrow. Tomorrow is an interesting day for me at work tomorrow because I have to leave this island.
Are you excited to leave the island?
I'm not excited about the weather back home, but I get to go home and see my family, and then we get to start building the fish room and setting tanks back up. So that'll be a great time.
Sounds like fun.
Sean wants to see you shop back the duckweed. Do you have duckweed at your house? I mean, that was a silly question. but everybody has duckweed.
I got duckweed in only one tank. And
Okay.
it's going to stay like that.
Dragon Layer said he makes tortoise food out of his duckweed. That's one animal. Like, I'm into lizards and I'm into frogs, and I've kept them both, but I don't have an interest in keeping turtles or tortoises.
I have a Reddit slider turtle I rescued. But that's a whole different story.
Cheshire Cat doesn't hate duckweed, but has a beta that has very thick of it in his tank, and the beta hates it. I imagine it's probably hard to build a bubble nest up at the surface with a bunch of duckweed there. So I could maybe see that.
How long is it going to take you to fly home?
So tomorrow I will fly roughly 8 hours to Hawaii, where I hopefully plan to meet up with HC Aqua. That's Jesse from Hot Chicken Aquatics. And then the following day, it'll be about another 8-hour flight home. It is exciting, Patty. I'm excited. Hopefully you guys are excited, because that means instead of this hotel room, you get to see my fish tanks. I'll get to produce some actual videos, and we'll start building a fish room. Right now it has a floor.
Miss those curtains.
No, you're not. You don't mean that at all. Not even a little bit. So we'll finally get to work on the fish tanks back home. And right now I've got my 125 set up, 4 20-gallon highs with some shrimp and endlers, and that's it. So a lot of work to do.
You gonna do shrimp? What kind of shrimp?
I have shrimp. So right now I have, call them cherries if you want, but I have red neos, and then I have orange, blues, and yellows. No cards yet. Maybe one of these days. Dragon Layer likes snakes, lizards, and tortoises. Yeah, I don't know. I've never had a desire to keep a snake, but George, so Aqua Balls, for those of you that aren't aware, has a lot of ball pythons, and he's some of them are pretty cool. So maybe he'll influence me a little bit.
I got one of them.
Is it from George?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Did you go out and pick it up, or was he able to ship that to you?
Well, so he showed it when he cut the eggs open and it was born, basically.
Okay.
And I was like, I want that one. And then when I went to go visit him, I held it, and then when I went back home, and he shipped it to me.
Okay, cool. Bottom Dollar says he can't keep duckweed alive. You're lucky, man. I wish I couldn't keep it alive.
He better has too much surface agitation.
I spend a lot of money to grow some cool plants for duckweed to just be shading them out.
Ooh, Amy is here. Let me get the snake.
Patty? No. So Patty said she never got to see the beach. I thought I took you guys outside on the patio to see the beach.
Yeah, you did.
Or do you want me to go down to the beach to make a video?
Let me get the snake.
All right. So Priscilla's looking for her snake. I'm not going to say where she's looking for what kind of snake, but she's looking for a snake somewhere. So if any of you guys have a snake you'd be willing to offer up, feel free. Anthony asked if I'm going to film the progress of the fish room. Definitely, Anthony. So right now, all that's done in the fish room is I did a portion of the floor, because I still have to knock out a wall, move it 5 feet one direction, and then start. I plan to do all the electrical myself. We got to seal it off to keep the moisture and the heat in there. So it's going to be a long process, but I do plan on filming it. Should be hopefully make for some good content. I'm going to learn along the way. The last little fish room build that I included in the video that I posted probably Monday for you guys, I think. It was kind of a test bed for some different things I wanted to try. So this will be a little bit bigger of an excursion. Sean can't think of Jesse the same. Hot chicken it is. Crown Tail's going to send me a link with the Repashy and meds. Okay, cool. Give me 1 second. I'll let Priscilla talk about her snake, and I'll check my email. I'm just going to... So you do snake things.
Aqua balls. It's a ball python, and it's a yellow belly ghost. I believe. And when I got her,
So-
she was about a third of the size what she is now.
So
she's-
I don't know ball python genes. What does the ghost gene mean?
It makes it like fade on the side, if you can see that.
Okay.
Like she's fading.
Okay.
But she's a pretty friendly snake.
Yeah.
Pretty cool snake.
Now, is that the only one you have?
Yes. She's gonna
Okay.
bite. She's gonna bite.
And what kind of enclosure do you need for that? I mean, does it take up a lot of space, or?
I got her in a 3 by close to 2 foot tub with a lid.
Okay. And I mean, are they pretty easy to care for? Do you have to feed her often, or once a week, or?
I usually feed her once a week. I mean, she's been growing pretty quick and whatnot.
Okay, and if you like live or frozen pinkies, or what do you
live just because I don't want to deal with dyeing up frozen stuff and wiggling it in front of her face. And
okay,
I just rather drive to the reptile store and buy it and throw it in there, close it.
Okay. And I mean, you don't experience any like, scratches or cuts or anything?
No,
okay.
It takes seconds and it's gone.
Okay. Crowntail Half Moon asks where I'm at. I'm on Guam. Anthony says his snake's bigger. You know what? I think we have a challenge here. So let's.
His snake is bigger because it's like a year older.
Is it?
Yeah.
Let's. And is his also from George?
Yes. George is the snake guy.
Is it related to yours at all? Are they from like the same?
I don't think so.
Male or female at all?
No, I don't think they're related.
Okay.
George? No. Where is George at?
He popped in. He said he wasn't feeling well. I know he said his tooth's been bugging him lately. Sean's still stuck on the duckweed chop back video, so we might have to make that happen.
Yep, you do.
HC Aqua, Jesse mentioned he's not cutting his stash so he can hang with me. Why would you have to cut your stash? I mean, yours probably can't keep up with me regardless. Oops, Ooh, Dragon Layer said his male, he has a carpet python, which I think those get bigger than balls, but his is a 7 foot. I don't know if I'd want something that big in my house.
Well, this one's supposed to get 5 foot, and I was like, do I really want an animal that's going to get as tall or long as I am?
Okay.
And then I was like, yeah, no, it will be fine.
Okay. Geek Boy used to have a red tail boa, 40 pounds. Got out when I went on vacation one week. I believe you live in Colorado, so I'd have a hard time imagining that it survived too long. I mean, maybe through like the fall, but
actually, when I went to the reptile store yesterday, somebody surrendered a red tail boa.
Really?
Yeah.
See, there you go, Geek Boy. You can go rehome the surrendered snake. Sands Creek Aquatics 2 came over here. I know you're a Catfish Dairy stream. Hopefully you had fun over there. Welcome to the All Things Fish stream. We're glad you're here. If you missed it, we talked about some different filtration options, some filter medias, and then we got into medications. So if you want to catch the replay, or if you want to rewind, see what you can get into. Bottom Dollars asked if I got a minute, check out a video I posted of the little white things in my tank. Not yet, Bottom Dwellers. Did you post that? Is that in Get Gills? If it's in Get Gills, I might be able to share it on my screen and we can take a look at it. Crown Tail Half Moon sent me Ted's Rapashi video. I posted that up in the chat if anybody else would like to take a look at that. That's something I'm interested in as well. It seems like it'd be easy. I mean, usually I make a batch of Rapashi about once a month. So if I could just keep some on hand to have just in case, it wouldn't hurt anything.
So you can make your own gel foods too. You just have to use gelatin.
Gelatin? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse said he's out. He got a call for dinner. I know he's been working on setting up tanks and stuff. It's got to be close to. Now, does he keep? Do you know? Does he keep his guppies and stuff in tubs outside year round? Is he able to do that there?
Yeah,
Okay.
because he lives in paradise.
Sand Creek Aquatics. Amy said she's going to try to get some sleep. Hope you're feeling better, Amy. Sorry that you had to go through that. But if you can't sleep, we might be here. I know Skippers is out, but maybe somebody will fire up an after party. Seems like it's been a trend lately for just the chat.
Anthony, because he has off tomorrow.
Is that true, Anthony? Oh, let's find out.
Oh, maybe I wasn't supposed to say. Oh, look. Yeah, of course.
Anthony's Fishy Friends, everybody. Welcome. This is turning into the snake chat real quick. Bye, Hot Chicken. Scott said he had fun in Catfish Fairy stream. I pulled it open a little bit earlier, but I was trying to do some last minute reading up on some filtration stuff. So I had half an idea what I was talking about. But thanks for coming over here. Sorry I missed you over there. Foxy's Fish, hello, hello. And we have Anthony from Anthony's Fishy Friends up here with, that is not a fishy friend at all. That thing would eat half my fish, I think. What you got there, Anthony?
Don't know. George thought it was a lithium ball python at one point, but now he's thinking it could be something else, so I don't know. And I was going to name it Battery or Energizer.
There you go. Bottom Roller said he posted the video on his YouTube. I'll see if I can find it while you guys talk snake stuff. Now,
yeah, yours got big.
Yeah, he's 3 feet.
How often do you feed him? You still feed him once a week?
Yeah, and sometimes he doesn't eat, like when he's going to shed. I've learned when he's going to shed, I don't even go buy a rat anymore.
Mine still eats, even if she's going to shed.
Yeah, yours is going to be bigger.
Mine just wants to eat. After it ate, it acts like I'm feeding it. I'm going to feed her again. Somebody asked how I know why she's a female. I know that she's a female because George told me. George has the magic touch to look if it's a male or a female.
George straight up puts their insides out.
Yeah, which
Not
sounds,
really,
it looks terrible, so I won't do it. I just take his word for it.
Yeah, I've seen him do it. I wouldn't do it myself. I already know what it is. There's no reason for me to put my snake through that.
Yeah.
Chevy Fish is lurking. They're waiting till their phone dies. Have a good night, Chevy. Thanks for stopping by. As always, we're glad to see you. Now,
A Wookiee.
what is, I mean, I know some of those ball pythons, like depending on their genetics, can get up into like multiple thousands of dollars. And what's like an average ball, like average ball python, like something you guys have cost?
I think mine was like $200.
Well,
I don't know
George
if George
said
gave me
that
deals
this
on it.
could be a pretty pricey one. That's what he's hoping for. So he's hoping it's not the lithium, and it is one of those pretty pricey snakes.
Okay. Hey, yes, I don't know if I saw you here earlier, but if I didn't say hello, howdy, howdy.
Oh, yeah.
Look, George, how big she's got.
See, this is what a snake is good for. A neck massage. And I'm not joking.
Mine won't stay on my neck.
Oh, he doesn't stay. I have to keep putting him on. But it feels good.
And you guys do trying to get so Bottom Dweller's posted this video and he's not sure what it is, so I'm trying to get it up on the screen here for a moment so we can see if we can help a brother out.
Hey, while you guys do that, I'm gonna go put the snake away and to the ladies' room at my house. Well,
I'm glad you're doing it at your house. So Bottom dweller says he has these little white specks moving around his tank. Not sure what they are. Let's see if we can get a good enough look and figure out what he's got going on. I see a couple of them swimming around in there. It does look like they're swimming and not just stuck on the glass or moving through the water at least. So I would think there'd be some type of like a small pod of some sort. Shouldn't be problematic. A lot of those things, it's easy to see stuff in your tank, but sometimes it can be hard to identify without actually getting it, under a scope, just because there's some things where you might be able to see it, but you can't really tell what's going on. But personally, I wouldn't be too worried about it. Bottom dwellers, like I said, it looks like just kind of a small pod twitching around in there. Maybe somebody else is seeing something that I'm not, and they could comment in the chat, and we can get a little better ID on these. Whoa. Definitely moving under their own power. I would definitely think it's some type of like a pod. Myself, like I said, I wouldn't be too worried about them. We'll see ya. Seed shrimp. Cheshire Cat said seed shrimp. Jeffrey Watts said seed shrimp. S. Scud, seed shrimp. Dragon layer. A lot of people are leaning towards seed shrimp. Which if that's the case, enjoy the free food source. A lot of people pay money for that. Oops. Apparently there's 70,000 different species of seed shrimp. That's a bunch.
All that stuff there is. How many?
It's insane. Like,
well, not at that many of Hydra, but there's still a good amount of species of Hydra.
I mean, 70,000 species. I don't know how you'd determine variations, but apparently somebody did, and they figured it out. Bottom dweller says that's a CPD and shrimp tank. If you got CPDs in there and you think they're spawning, those seed shrimp will be a great food source, I would think. I haven't bred CPDs myself. Foxy's loves your scarf, Anthony.
Thanks, Roxanne.
It looks like it's potentially maybe just holding your head on so it doesn't fall off tonight. But what's a seed shrimp? It's a little ostracod, and they basically just kind of twitch around in the water and feed on super small things. Definitely not something to worry about. Just a crustacean, really. It's like you have scuds, and then seed shrimp are kind of a step down in size. I wouldn't be worried about them. Maybe somebody else has negative experiences with them. If you do, hop down in the chat. Let me know what you think, and let's help bottom dwellers aquatics out.
Ooh, Chevy says swimming dots are the seed shrimp, and the bigger ones are with legs are scuds.
Okay. So yeah, what I get out of this is good food sources. Definitely, Chevy said they feed both to their fish, so great options for food. No problems there. CBD spawn, just don't ever move them because that tank is so full of plants, so they just eat the fry. What you could do is, I don't know the exact period of time that it takes CPDs to hatch out, but to give it a few days and then catch the parents, since they're probably easier to catch, move them out and see if you get any fry that hatch out and start swimming around, if you have room.
I'm going to be lining the Zis breeder box with the, have you seen George's CPD setup?
I haven't yet.
Hey, bro, you're getting a little tight now, dog.
Getting comfortable. Crowntail asked if I keep Daphnia. I have kept Daphnia in the past. I kept them outside in a large tub, and just an air stone to keep a little movement in the water. Not super hard to keep. There's a bunch of YouTube videos out there. Maybe this spring I'll set up another tub outside and I'll make a video about it. George said CPDs are 3 days to a week. So I would wait till you see some spawning behavior, give them a couple days after that, and then pull the parents if you can. If not, I mean, you could move the fish to a tank. I've seen a variety of different, egg scatter type setups, anywhere from a screen bottom. I think Jason from Jadron Aquatics used a piece of craft screen and just put it up off the top of a tank to spawn some tetras, and then just move the parents, collected the eggs out of the bottom. There's some more intense setups. Like I said, Anthony mentioned that George has a Zis box type setup for his CPDs. Maybe if George has a video for that, feel free to post that in here so we can check that out.
No, George we can set up a whole 20-gallon tank for it. So he used like pieces of PVC and like a mesh net type stuff, large enough for the eggs to fall through. What I want to do is use this breeder box, but line the bottom with that, because the screen out that it comes with, the holes are too big. The CPDs can swim through.
Oh, okay. Crowntail asks what fishes will eat it. As far as with fish, if it fits in their mouth, they'll try to eat it. So a lot of them are micro predators. So any of those little scuds or pods or seed shrimp that are cruising around in your tank, they'll pick at and chow down on. Foxy said her CBDs like to spawn in subwasser tank. I could definitely see that. She says she lets the parents spawn in it for 3 days and then moves to subwasser tank. That might be an option for you. I think George the other day posted he was trying to get something to spawn, and he had little cups of either like moss or subwasser tank, and he was trying to motivate them to spawn in the cup, and then you could easily just remove the cup and hatch the eggs out separately. So lots of options. Definitely sounds like George has had pretty good luck. I would talk to him, ask him some questions. He's down in the chat. I just saw him a minute ago. Feel free to tag him at Aquaballs. Should get his attention. Bottom below said he also saw a worm-looking thing before seeing the little seed shrimp in there, a couple of millimeters long. That's something that you definitely have to get a good look at, because there's just so many options. Chevy Fish listed a bunch of fish that'll eat those seed shrimp. Bottom below said, yeah, there's no moving fish out of the tank right now. I know how that goes. I've got fish that have spawned in, some pretty heavily planted displays, and it's just kind of a lost cause. Passionate Fruit, I don't think we've met yet. Hello, welcome. I'm Mike. This is All Things Fish. I'm sure you know that, but thanks for joining us. Guam's infamous for millions of invasive brown tree snakes that have decimated native wildlife. Grab a headlamp, run into the jungle, and make a vid before I leave. So around the airfield, they have all sorts of traps set up to try to catch some of the brown tree snakes. And before our aircraft can actually leave the island, they have a dog, and they'll run the dog through the airplane and see if they can sniff anything out to make sure that we're not hauling them anywhere else. And I've heard, I don't know for sure, I haven't looked into it much, but I've heard that there's not many birds here because those brown tree snakes climb up into the trees and eat all the bird eggs. So Passionate Fruit sounds like you know something about it, though. Running through the jungle here at night with a headlamp sounds like it could potentially end up pretty interesting. Not sure that I'll plan on doing that. Aquaballs dropped his Instagram, DBD_reptiles, or Aquaballs on Facebook. Instagram's something that I'm trying to get into. At the beginning of the stream, I talked about a little bit. So if you have your Instagram, feel free to post it in the chat, comment after the stream so we can all connect outside of YouTube. Welcome back, Priscilla. What'd you find?
Carrots.
Carrots? What do you need carrots for?
I don't know. I was hungry, and there was carrots.
Yeah.
And something.
Kev asked for a link. I don't know what link you're asking about, Kev. So if you could.
allthingsfish.com.
No, it's taken. We have to wait until May.
Oh,
so
you
I am.
Your new logo. Oh, right, it's right there.
So I am trying to set up a website where I can share a little more information so I can link everything to one central location. So hopefully in the next few months, as long as I have the time, we can make that happen. Bomb Dwellers asked, what was the worm thing? Because he missed it. So without seeing it in person or having a really close up picture, it's hard to identify worms like that.
Let me find the picture and see if that's it.
If what's it?
Green share, the worm.
Oh, I didn't see. He said so the worm he said he saw before the video. So I don't think there's a picture of a video that I could share. And I think you were out while we played that game.
But here, share my screen. See if it's this. Is it this worm?
Does it have an arrow-shaped head? I think that could be. That's usually a pretty good indicator.
On the glass?
Mm-hmm.
If it's, this is a flatworm that lives on the glass, and then you get also the little wiggly longer worms that swim through the water column, which are usually detritus worms.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's planaria.
And planaria, would you say it's good, bad, ugly, indifferent?
If you have just fish, it's fine. They're not going to harm the fish. If you have shrimp, they will go after shrimplets or sting adult shrimp and eat them out from the inside out. Made this sound worse than it is. No, but you can get rid of it with. There's two solutions. Solution number one is get a goat dewormer of Amazon called Smack Guard something. It's liquid.
Something.
Let me find it. Show you the picture. Or you could use no planaria. One or the other. And that's basically a dewormer, which will kill the planaria, but it also kills your snails. It won't kill shrimp, plants, or fish, but it will kill your
Safeguard.
snails.
Okay.
Fenbendazole, and it looks like this.
Okay.
It's a yellow-green bottle, $35, liquid goat dewormer.
Okay. And Papa Shrimp said fenbendazole there too. So
Yeah.
Which I like using that. I haven't used planaria away because I just started getting planaria, but I do like using that one you showed.
I like no planaria. Works pretty well. But a lot of people don't.
Crowntail said they recently got a TDS meter. It says they need to rinse it in distilled water. Is there anything else they can use instead of distilled water? Honestly, I rinse mine in tank water, and I can't tell the difference. I still get pretty similar readings to what I would expect to see. I think probably that's a cover their butt thing. If you don't use distilled water, potentially if you have hard water, it could leave mineral deposits on the actual diodes of the TDS meter, which would affect the conductivity readings. But I've had mine for a few years, and it still seems to be pretty accurate just using regular tank water. So I think you'd be fine. Well, it would be, I would consider rinsing it in distilled or a best practice. Probably not required. That's kind of like maybe if it was a pH probe. Like pH probes, generally they have you store it in a storage solution to keep the actual hardware in better shape. But I think with a TDS meter, you should be just fine. So Shivami Timbas said they used SL Aqua Bioprotector Z1, which I do not have experience with, and am completely clueless about, to be honest. It didn't kill pest snails, but it did kill planaria. So are you familiar with that at all, Priscilla?
Bioprotector C1. No. What brand is it? Well, I can just look it up. Bioprotector. The thing with
Aqua.
With the liquid fenbendazole is if you use it in a shrimp tank, I feel like if you overdo it, it slows down the reproduction of your shrimp. But that's not a fact. That's just my experience, my opinion. Some other people maybe would say otherwise.
Okay.
And then no planaria is natural powder form that will kill planaria. Some people say it doesn't work, but I feel like if you use it by instructions, it works out just fine.
Okay.
So
I think that instruction part is a key part for most people. Something a lot of people don't do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's by Glass Garden. Glass Garden is amazing. It's a German brand.
Mm-hmm. So Amy asked if she can just leave planaria alone. I would say if you have a fish-specific tank, you'd be just fine. Some people, and there's videos out there, have had problems with planaria killing shrimp. So that would really be the only situation where I would consider actually doing something to treat it myself. Maybe you guys have different opinions or experiences.
Will planaria kill snails?
There's different types of planaria actually. If you want to go like into the details of it, there's some planaria that gets way large, some that stays tiny, and if you starve the planaria, like there's not enough food for the planaria, because the planaria usually lives in the gravel and comes out at nighttime, kind of like Malaysian trumpet snails do. But if they don't have enough of a food source, of course they will go find a food source. And I mean, if there's a snail that happens to be in its path, that snail.
Now, Papa Shrimp brought up a pretty good point when you're treating planaria about the ammonia spike afterwards when you're treating for pests. So I'm not sure about the exact directions. I haven't used the products myself, but definitely think about what you're doing. So you're killing what could potentially be a large amount of organisms. So there you can definitely see an ammonia spike or a nitrate spike afterwards. So keep your eye on it and water change as required.
So the Aquarium Bioprotector C1 is from Glass Gardens, which is a German company. And it's basically the same thing as No Planaria by Grenken, which is a European company as well. It's a natural killer.
Okay. All right, guys. It seems like things are kind of winded down here. We've been on for 2 hours. I appreciate you all tuning in. Anthony, thanks for stepping up, playing the mod game. Appreciate it. Dropping links all night, showing us that critter in your hands, so to speak. Priscilla, as always, it's a pleasure chatting with you, hanging out. Your knowledge is invaluable, and appreciate your time. I'm sure the people in the chat think so as well. Everybody that tuned in, Amy, Chevy, Papa Shrimp, Dragon Lair, there's still 26 people watching, but I think we're going to call it a night. Hope you guys have a good evening. Next time, you'll see me in a completely different place. I'll be able to show you some tanks, and it'll be fun. So real quick, those of you that are left, tonight we kind of talked about filtration, and then we wandered off into medications. What do you guys want to see next time? And we'll I'll do some research, and we'll prep a little topic.
Yeah, because you're not going to be on my stream on Friday.
I will not. So drop a comment in the chat. Let me know what you want to see, and if maybe it's something that I don't know about, and maybe it'll be good for me to go do a little research. So Steve fought Aquatics. Hey man, thanks for stopping by. Rainbow fish. That's something I love. I don't know a ton about it, but that would be a good topic. Rainbow fish would be awesome.
I don't know
Maybe
much about rainbow fish.
maybe next week. I know Bob knows a lot about rainbow fish. Maybe we should have Bob Steenfot join us, and we'll pick his brain.
I don't know if I want to be here if Bob's here.
Fine. I'll take Bob anyway.
Yeah, so you take Bob over me. I don't blame him. He knows more about rainbow fish.
Just for one time. Kira wants to see my hot Air Force friends. Well, I don't know if there's a lot of fish geeks in the Air Force, but maybe someday I'll have somebody stop by and at least provide some color commentary. Jeffrey Watts, acidic and alkalinity levels. That would definitely be an option. We could maybe talk about that. Thanks for throwing out some ideas. Once again.
I'll ask Bob if he wants to come up. Oh, so if it's going to be rainbow fish, I'm going to be the one preparing the questions because I don't know that much about rainbow fish. I know it's your stream, but
yeah, we'll figure it out. And I know Bob's busy. I know he's kind of going through some stuff right now. But if he'd be interested, always open to guests that know way more stuff about it, things than I do, because that gives me an opportunity to learn too. And some of you guys might be excited, Patty, that I might shut up for a little bit. But it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Did you say you talk too much?
Patty says I talk too much.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh, that's great.
But that's it. Maybe somebody wants to fire up a stream next. If so, you're more than welcome to let us know in the chat, and maybe some people pop up for the after party. But
in the chat.
I will not be around for Priscilla's stream on Friday. So I think it'll be Priscilla from Swiss Aquatics will stream. What time are you streaming Friday night?
10 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Pacific.
And then is Anthony, are you hanging out tonight, or are you going to just do your usual stream later this week?
I'm going to hang out tonight. I ain't got no work tomorrow.
All right. So run over to Anthony's Fishy Friends, and we'll keep the chat and the playful banter going over there. We'll see you next time. Thanks again. Much love. Bye-bye.
Bye.